Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Before I Go podcast. Today, I wanted to talk about empathy. I was reading a book entitled Understanding Yourself and Others, An Introduction to the Four Temperaments by Linda V. Behrens. I'm often curious about temperament and personality types and things like that, so I'm really drawn to this type of thing. The four temperaments that are listed are the improviser, the stabilizer, the theorist, and the catalyst. I read the description for the catalyst and determined immediately that it did not apply to me. The catalyst is someone who, among other things, is a people person who demonstrates empathy easily. Empathy, by definition, is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. That is, the capacity to place oneself in another's position. The different types of empathy are affective empathy, which involves the ability to understand a person's emotions and respond appropriately. There's cognitive empathy, which involves being able to understand a person's mental state and what they might be thinking in response to the situation. And finally, there's somatic empathy, which involves having a physical reaction in response to what someone else is experiencing. Now, this is not to be confused with sympathy, which is understanding from my perspective. I can sympathize all day, but empathize? Now, if there is one thing that I know about myself, is that I am not naturally empathetic. I may be able to understand a person's emotional response to a situation, but understanding their mental state or have a physical reaction to what you're experiencing, no. Additionally, just to be sure, I took an empathy quotient test online. And my score indicated a lack of empathy common in people with autism or Asperger's syndrome. To be clear, I am not on the autism spectrum, and I do not have Asperger's syndrome. And before you judge me, just know that I'm not a monster or a sociopath. I know that everyone has their own beliefs, experiences, and perspectives, and I can respect that even if I don't understand it. Honestly, and forgive my language, I am just a person who doesn't give a fuck. But is that a good thing or a bad thing? I know that my ability to give zero fucks is my way of protecting myself from harm. I know that. However, I feel that in the process of protecting myself, I may be alienating others and possibly making them feel less than or like their feelings are not valid, which I absolutely do not want to do. I know exactly who I am, and I act accordingly. And I sometimes do not take into consideration that everyone on the planet is not like that. So instead of saying, that's their problem, not mine, perhaps I could make more of an effort to understand others, to be more empathetic. So my question is, can empathy be learned? I believe it can be taught, but whether or not it can be learned truly depends on the willingness of the student. Based on what I've read, the simple answer is yes, empathy can be learned. It is a skill like any other skill. And while I don't believe I can change my nature, I do believe I can be more intentional about being a more empathetic person. I understand that some things come naturally and some things we have to work at. For example, I am naturally a person of great faith. Faith is a spiritual gift, and not everyone, not even all Christians, have that gift. Some have to work on it, and it took me a while to comprehend that. So if you're a person who is naturally empathetic, please be patient with those of us who are not. Empathy is an important value. Empathy leads to compassion, and I know that we can all be more compassionate. Now, if you're a longtime listener, you know that one of my primary values is to live peacefully. One of the ways that I have been able to accomplish that is to avoid people in situations that would threaten or challenge that peace. What if Instead of avoidance, I attempted to confront, understand, and possibly reconcile situations through empathy. Now, I'm just spitballing here. I'm not even sure if I have the capacity to do that. I don't have a lot of patience when it comes to most people. Something else I should probably work on. Will developing a stronger sense of empathy help to change my perspective that most people just suck? I'm willing to explore that possibility. In an article published in Psychology Today, Diana Robb, PhD, shared 7 ways to nurture empathy, and here are just a few of them. Be self-aware. The more open you are to your own emotions by recognizing them and actually naming them, for example, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm hurt, etc., the more easily you will be attuned to the emotions and feelings of others. Another way is to be a good listener. To be empathetic, you have to really hear what the other person is telling you. To develop empathy, it's important to have all the details. Give the person a chance to express themselves and refrain from interrupting. When in conversation, actually listen. Don't just wait to talk. Another way is to suspend judgment and disbelief. And while listening is key to developing empathy, it's also important not to judge what the person is telling you. It's equally important not to offer tips or suggestions. When you want to fix someone else's problem, then there's a good chance you're not empathetic. If you're thinking about fixing the problem, you're not in tune to what they're going through. And lastly, put aside your own views and values. It's important to do this so that you're completely focused on the other person's needs. You have to get in your mind, it's not about me. It's not about me. Now, I believe I am self-aware and that I'm a good listener. I have to work on being too judgmental and putting aside my own views and values. Also, after reviewing this list, I find that it is easier for me to and probably you to show empathy towards people that you're close to or people that look like you. Conversely, it can be challenging to show empathy toward those that we view as other. After taking the empathy quotient test, I realized that I probably would have answered many of the questions differently 30 or 40 years ago, which implies that I may have been more empathetic when I was younger. But after living for so long and experiencing so much, I believe I became less empathetic toward others. And I can honestly say that I would like to change that. It's just going to take some work. Dr. Maya Angelou said, I think we all have empathy. We may not have the courage to display it. Displaying empathy involves being vulnerable, and vulnerability takes courage. At least for me, it does. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening. But before I go, let me share this with you from Plato, who says, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. I'll see you next time.